electrician noticed blood on the house floor, but what the homeowner did was shocking. The electrician arrived at the house and was greeted by a nervous man. He let him inside, saying the hallway lights needed fixing. As he set down his tools, he noticed a dark stain under the carpet. It was deep red and dried blood. He stayed calm and continued checking the house. The air smelled strange and the silence felt heavy. As he stepped further, he knocked his boot lightly on the wooden floor. A hollow sound echoed beneath him. There was a space under the floor. Keeping his voice steady, he told the man he needed special tools and would return the next day. That night, he called the police. The next day, he came back with a disguised officer. While the electrician kept the man distracted, the officer searched the floor. He found an uneven edge and carefully pulled it up, revealing a hidden door. When he opened the door, he saw something terrifying. A hollow sound echoed beneath him. There was a space under the floor. Keeping his voice steady, he told the man he needed special tools and would return the next day. That night, he called the police. The next day, he came back with a disguised officer. While the electrician kept the man distracted, the officer searched the floor. He found an uneven edge and carefully pulled it up, revealing a hidden door. When he opened the door, he saw something terrifying. The officer's flashlight illuminated the darkness, revealing a narrow staircase descending below the house. The air seeping from the opening was damp and foul, a mixture of mold and something metallic that made his throat tighten. Slowly, the officer began his descent, each wooden step groaning under his boots. His torch beam cut through the gloom, bouncing off the cracked walls that closed in tightly around him. Upstairs, the electrician forced himself to remain calm as he pretended to examine the fuse box, nodding to the homeowner as if everything was normal, but his heart was racing. He caught the man's eyes flickering nervously toward the floorboards, his jaw tightening with each passing moment. He knew something was wrong down there, and the officer was about to find out what. As the officer reached the bottom, he swept his light across the basement. What he saw froze him where he stood. Against the damp stone walls, rusted chains dangled, some still bolted into place. On the ground were small mattresses, stained and torn, spread out across the cold floor. In one corner, a pile of old, broken toys lay abandoned, their colors dulled with dust. Dolls with missing eyes, stuffed animals ripped open, a small car with its wheels snapped off. The officer's stomach clenched. The smell of rot hung heavy, mixed with a musty dampness that made the air hard to breathe. Then came the sound, a faint, fragile whimper that cut through the silence. The officer spun toward the noise, his beam landing on the far corner of the room. His breath caught as the light revealed several children huddled together, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear. Some clutched each other tightly, their tiny hands trembling. Others looked too weak to move, their heads bowed low. Their clothes were ragged, their skin bruised. The officer immediately spoke softly, lowering his torch slightly to avoid blinding them. He called for backup through his radio, his voice steady but urgent. Upstairs, the electrician caught the faint crackle of the radio and glanced nervously at the man standing near the door. The man's shoulders stiffened, and his eyes darted toward the floor. He knew he had been exposed. Slowly, he stepped back, his hand twitching toward the exit. The electrician quickly shifted, blocking the doorway with his body. The man tried to push past him, his voice sharp, demanding to be let out, but the electrician planted his feet firmly, refusing to move. He knew help was on the way. Moments later, the sound of heavy boots pounded against the porch. Police officers burst through the front door, weapons drawn, shouting commands. The man froze, his face draining of color as he raised his hands. Officers swarmed inside, forcing him to the ground and snapping cold metal cuffs around his wrists. He remained silent, his expression blank, almost emotionless, as if caught in a nightmare he could no longer control. Down in the basement, the first officer gently approached the children, speaking softly to calm them. Some shrank back at first, their eyes wide with mistrust. But when more officers entered, carrying blankets and torches, a few of the children began to move. They were lifted carefully, wrapped in blankets and carried upstairs into the fresh air. Ambulances waited outside, their lights flashing silently in the night. Medics rushed forward, checking each child, offering water, wrapping them tightly to keep them warm. Some were too weak to speak, others whispered softly, their voices shaking. The electrician stood back, his heart pounding as he watched the scene unfold. What started as a simple job to fix a flickering light had turned into something he could never have imagined. He watched as the children were guided into ambulances, some clinging to the hands of officers, others being carried gently. Relief washed over him, but it was mixed with horror at what he had just witnessed. Back inside the house, detectives began their search. Every drawer, every cupboard, every corner of the property was examined. They found documents linking the homeowner to several missing persons cases, maps with markings across different towns, and coded notes hinting at a wider network. Computers were seized, hard drives pulled from hidden compartments. This was no isolated crime. It was part of something much larger. At the station, the man was questioned for hours. At first, he refused to speak, his eyes blank, his lips sealed tight. But evidence mounted quickly. Fingerprints matched to known suspects. Surveillance photos connected him to other properties, and testimonies from rescued children began to piece together a chilling truth. He was part of a vast kidnapping ring that had been operating for years. The house the electrician entered was just one of many safe houses used to hide victims. Over the following days, law enforcement launched coordinated raids across the region. Abandoned warehouses, remote cottages, and even apartments in busy city blocks were raided. Dozens of suspects were arrested. More children were found, some missing for weeks, others for months. The scale of the operation shocked even veteran investigators. It was one of the largest rescue operations the country had seen in years. The electrician's role did not go unnoticed. Without his quick thinking, without his decision to call the police instead of walking away, the children in that basement might never have been found. Local media picked up the story, praising his courage and calm under pressure. Interviews described him as an ordinary man who stumbled into something extraordinary. But when asked, he always said the same thing. He just did what anyone else would have done. Deep down, though, he knew many people might have looked the other way. He hadn't. And because of that, lives were saved. For weeks after, he struggled to shake the images from his mind. The pale faces, the frightened eyes, the sound of that faint whimper in the darkness. He tried to return to his normal work, wiring houses, fixing circuits. But every time he knelt down with his tools, the memory of that hidden door came back to him. It wasn't something he could ever forget. Meanwhile, investigators pieced together the full extent of the ring. The man who had greeted the electrician that day was only one link in a long chain. Behind him stood organizers, traffickers, and financiers who had profited from misery. But his arrest had cracked the chain wide open. With every raid, more names were revealed, more locations uncovered, and more children freed from captivity. In court, the homeowner sat silently as charges were read out. Kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, conspiracy. Witnesses testified against him, including officers, investigators, and eventually some of the children who had grown strong enough to speak. The electrician was called to the stand as well. He described the flickering lights, the stain on the floor, the hollow sound when he tapped his boot. The courtroom sat in silence as he recounted the moment the officer opened the hidden door and the horror that lay beneath. When the verdict was delivered, it was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The man showed no emotion as he was led away in chains, but outside the courthouse, relief spread among families who had been waiting for answers for years. Reunions followed, with parents embracing children they thought were lost forever. Tears fell, laughter mixed with cries, and gratitude poured out for the officers, investigators, and yes, even the electrician whose ordinary job had turned into something extraordinary. The story spread far beyond the town, making headlines across the country. Commentators spoke about the courage of one man who refused to ignore what he saw. But for the electrician, it was never about praise. It was about the memory of those children, huddled in the darkness, waiting for someone to find them. That memory would stay with him for the rest of his life.